Hello, my name is Terry McVenes. I'm honored to serve as the President and CEO of RTCA. RTCA has a tremendously rich history, having served the aviation community with distinction and effectiveness since 1935, with the focus on standards development, collective decision-making, and consensus building. We are continuing to evolve our organization to meet the needs for new and emerging trends in aviation, empowering that aviation or that innovation through collaboration and building upon our legacy and reputation for accomplishment. And towards that goal, we're excited to expand our associations with government and industry partners so that we can best serve the entire aviation community. Today, I'm pleased to have with me Mr. Chris Oswald, the Vice President of Safety and Regulatory Affairs at Airports Council International North America. He also serves as a member of RTCA's advisory board. So Chris, welcome and thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. Glad to do it, Terry. Thanks for the invite.
So as I recall, you joined ACI North America around 2008 or so. Can you tell me a little bit about your background before coming to ACI?
Precisely 2008. I'll always remember it's actually on my birthday, surprisingly enough, so makes it easy. Before I joined the association, I was airport planner, focused on airfield and airspace issues, lots of work on capacity and simulation. Ran a airfield airspace practice for a consulting firm, Lee Fisher, which now part of Jacobs Engineering. So worked for a few other firms in the course of that, including one that Everapproach that worked as a liaison between the airlines and airports at San Francisco, but generally airport consulting.
Great. So tell me a little bit more about ACI North America. What's the overall mission of your organization?
Sure. So Airports Council International is a worldwide organization. We've got 5 regions as well as an office up in Montreal that deals with the International Civil Aviation Organization and issues affecting airports or aerodromes, as they call it. In the North American region, where we represent airports in the US and Canada, our mission really is fourfold: promoting cooperation within all the elements of the commercial civil aviation industry, reaching across to stakeholders, regulators, government agencies, legislators, all of whom have roles, as well as the broader communities that we serve. Encouraging, certainly as RTCA does, exchange of ideas, information, and experiences on the issues that we deal with on the airport side. Really serving as an information sharing body to our airport members in Canada and the United States on sort of substantive regulatory and legislative issues, as well as industry work that's going on that may affect them. And then certainly creating forums of common interest and promoting the professionalism of airport staff, as well as those that serve airport staff, those that are, like I was, a consultant or a contractor working with airports.
What are some of your current priorities today?
So certainly, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about infrastructure, but infrastructure is a priority in perpetuity for us. We are in a lot of ways the concrete, with pun intended, piece of the aviation system. We have a lot of facilities both in the US and Canada that require ongoing maintenance, modernization, capital investment, and in a lot of cases, although the last couple of years haven't been the greatest exemplar, but if we look back to 2019, capacity enhancement and capability enhancement for our airports. So that really serves as kind of a central priority for us. We also seek to ensure that new regulations or legislation affecting airports really is, developed with our, largely in the US to focus on US airports, publicly provided infrastructure. It's got that in mind, that we've got public operators that have certainly limitations on the resources they can access, need to do their jobs in the public interest. And that creates an interesting dynamic, and one that really isn't replicated in a lot of our other regions. So I think I'll go with those elements really as kind of investment. And I know we'll talk about R&D in a little bit, but I think also probably over the last, at least the last decade, since NextGen, the FAA's airspace modernization program, has really gone through from concept development to implementation, and now with certainly new generations of air vehicles new entrants coming into the marketplace, whether that's AAM or UAM, advanced air mobility, or uncrewed aircraft systems, really looking to how we can appropriately serve and take advantage of those technologies as they come into play. And I know we'll get into this a little bit later, hopefully, talking to you about how the partnership between ACI-NA and RTCA can help that.
So you brought up infrastructure. Certainly a lot of talk going on up on the Hill right now about the infrastructure package and the debates and who's going to get what. From an airport's perspective, what do you see as what's really needed from that infrastructure package to help in the airport area?
Well, certainly a lot of the provisions that deal with airport infrastructure have been pretty well established and reported since all the way back in August when the initial first bite at infrastructure, the kind of hard infrastructure bill, Building Back Better, or the Invest Act, came out. So I don't see that as being all that changeable. Certainly, we're happy to see the investment levels, an additional or a plus up to formulaic spending on airport infrastructure, kicking up by $3 billion per year, an additional $1 billion being provided for terminal improvements and kind of earmarked for that, which has been an area where U.S. airports really do need that contribution to modernize facilities. We've got a lot of older facilities in place, and older facilities in place across the country, and in a lot of cases at airports that are of a size where it makes a very, very large terminal program problematic or challenging to fund. So we're certainly happy to see that increased level of spending. Other priorities, certainly out there that we see on the infrastructure side that cross over: the expansion of the TIFIA program, a loan program originally put forward by DOT largely for ground transportation or highway projects. Seeing that eligibility expanded to include a broader range of airport projects also will give the airports that are really seeing, hitting some of their capital program funding limit caps, see another, approach or some alternative financing that would be available, supported by the federal government. So certainly, I'm focused a lot on hard infrastructure projects with what I've just talked about, but there are pretty significant investments required outside of the concrete side. Certainly cybersecurity and strengthening the security of our cyber infrastructure at airports is key. Improving operational efficiency at some of the larger, more congested, certainly as we return from the pandemic to more regular activity levels in the air transportation area, we're going to see congestion problems come back. So looking at ways that we can better manage, throughout the passenger's journey from curb to curb, those passenger movements through enhanced automation and decision support tools, pretty key as well.
Great. Aviation is definitely an international business, has been for a while. From the airport side of things, how do you collaborate on airport issues from on that international basis across outside of just North America?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, our organization really, for decades has been, although it did get its start with independent airport associations, airport operator associations in the United States, in Canada, the North American region, and in Europe, really has been a global organization since the late 1980s. And through ACI World and their participation with ICAO, certainly with IATA and other international aviation organizations, we do always have an eye for what global trends are likely to impact the North American marketplace. And we're seeing that play out, currently with something we did early on in the US 2 years ago, 2016, with new safety standards and reporting standards for runway conditions. Those are now rolling out globally, something called the Global Reporting Format, across worldwide, really looking to reduce runway excursion risks and improve airport safety globally. And I think from this global stage that we've got, the global infrastructure we've been able to take some of those lessons learned from the U.S. example and what we've done with some of the work done with the Takeoff and Landing Performance Aviation Rulemaking Committee, going all the way back to the early 2010s, take those lessons learned and the good data and research that's gone into the U.S. regulations and help out the world community that way. We see something working exactly in reverse, probably coming up this year, as we expect FAA to roll out safety management system requirements for airports, and lots of great information coming out of our Canadian members, as well as worldwide, with a lot of the other CAAs requiring safety management systems for airports, actually over the last half decade at least. So just two examples of how we work within our own organization. We work certainly with other organizations. I mentioned IATA, pretty key certainly as we look at things like ground handling, slot policy, global rates and charges policies, those things quite important on those fronts. And with the aircraft manufacturers, AIA as well, looking for how we accommodate or ensure that our facilities are capable of meeting the needs of new aircraft, new types of concepts, and seeing that grow into the AAM and UAM marketplace as well.
Great. So I'd like to just shift a little bit here to a topic I know that's near and dear to both of our hearts, and that's the area of research and development and the roles we both play in working with the FAA on some of those R&D activities. Again, from an airport's perspective, what do you see as some of the future needs in the research and development area for airports?
Absolutely, and those really do overlap with a number of pieces that I've picked up already. Certainly, how we accommodate newer evolving technologies, whether that's new entrant aircraft, advanced air mobility provider, and how they will interact not just with the airport, but how they'll interact with the communities around an airport. And for a number of our members, if they're city, municipally or state-run airports, might actually involve those airport operators getting involved in how that's going to work within their municipalities or what their agencies represent. You're looking a little bit beyond that. Certainly, something I haven't mentioned: sustainability and resiliency. And I don't want to conflate those two terms; they really are separate. But they're both really vital for the airport industry. And there's a lot of research that needs to continue to go on how we can make our airports more sustainable. Really looking to energy source transition, moving from really as it's writ large, with the COP26 meeting going on right now, away from non-renewable sources of energy to renewable and greener sources of energy, looking to provide greater levels of electrification and electricity as a fuel source to both aircraft and ground vehicles. Looking forward to that type of research, I think is exceedingly critical. And looking to how we really enhance both the resiliency and sustainability of the infrastructure itself. And this from our work on the FAA's Research, Engineering, and Development Advisory Committee. A lot of work that I do as chair of the airport subcommittee there, looks into, or I'd say just helps, because it's the FAA folks really doing that research, in looking at future pavement capabilities, extending the lives of airfield pavements, looking into certainly enhancing the environmental environment, I should say, around airports as we look to needed noise research that's going to continue to need to go on, reflecting changes in community standards, and certainly as we look to accommodating new types of aircraft and new air traffic control concepts. Those all have impacts on airport operators at some point or another. So all of those are pretty key priorities for us.
Yeah. So one last question for you, Chris. From a standards development organization like RTCA, what role do we have in helping to assist you in your mission?
Yeah, so I think in a lot of cases, what we look to is elements that are coming in more on the technology side, and that may be a little bit myopic on our part at ACI, but really we've interacted with RTCA over the years, largely through programs that are sponsored by or affect the air traffic organization down here in the United States. So certainly through RTCA's prior involvement in federal advisory committees like the Next Gen Advisory Committee and the Drone Advisory Committee, we saw that role as kind of vital for airports to be involved with. And we continue to see it as we see some of those technologies require standards. I know one thing that, Terry, you've been interested in getting involved with, certainly electrification standards and how we might be dealing with charging aircraft maybe other vehicles as well on airports. Certainly lots of need for standardization on that front. We see need for standards right now on the firefighting side, a pretty big issue for us. And I should have mentioned capital needs, looking forward to per and polyfluoroalkyl substance contamination. That's a mouthful, but PFAS contamination, forever chemical contamination on and around airports, which, because we've used firefighting foams that have PFAS in them and required by the federal government to do that here in the US, for a number of decades. Really looking to how we remediate that, certainly need for research there. And there's, really significant needs for new standards to accommodate non-fluorinated firefighting foams going forward. Know that Department of Defense is working on that, pretty diligently together with FAA. But there's going to be a whole set of requirements and follow-on impacts that'll come out of what those new standards are, and certainly be some need for follow-on standards or participation by those bodies that set standards working together with FAA. I'll conclude on one other piece. I think there is some continuing need for data standardization across internationally, across regions as we look to items like collaborative decision making. I think as an industry, we have struggled with that a little bit. We also see that in other areas of data dissemination, aeronautical data dissemination, and I think there are key roles that maybe aren't going completely filled on that front, and how we pursue international standardization. I know as FAA looks to maybe bring itself into accord with ICAO NOTAM standards, as well as to looking towards how we use aeronautical data to enhance operations at airports and within the airlines. There are probably some key needs there too as we look at collaborative decision making. So just some examples, and I'm sure there are more. So.
Well, great. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for being here with us today. Thanks for being part of the RTCA family, and certainly the role you play on our advisory board is very much appreciative.
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity today, and absolutely look forward to continuing with RTCA going forward. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Chris. For those of you listening, I've been speaking today with Mr. Chris Oswald, the Vice President of Safety and Regulatory Affairs at Airports Council International North America. If you are interested in learning more about our standards development work, if you have any questions about our training, or interested in becoming part of the RTCA family of members so that you too can have a part and a voice in developing those aviation standards, you can contact us directly through our website at www.rtca.org. You can always reach us on the phone. Thank you for listening.